Um, he has sent through a recording of his presentation. So, Shauna, please may you project the presentation for us, please.
Hello, my name is Atwine, and I'm going to be presenting on the topic of practical data harmonization in African health research. This work was done in conjunction with Elwazi under the Open Data Science platform. So I wanted to start with a challenge. So in the Elwazi DSI Africa research, we have multiple research hubs that collect vast amounts of data. Okay, so as a result, we have data heterogeneity, meaning there are vast and different types of data that is collected. So when we want to do research, you might find there is a cross section of data that is actually the same, but we are facing problems of having this data work together because of inconsistent name variables, um, missing metadata. So there is a bottleneck on how much we can use the data just because of how it's collected from different locations. So the question is, how do we get all this data that is hidden in silos out of this limitation so that research can move forward? So we need to do data harmonization to handle or to answer some of these questions. And the typical data harmonization process looks a couple of these steps. Well, you have a research question at step one, you assemble information and select studies, right? You define the variables that you need and evaluate if these variables map together, process the data, and then find out if the data is going to be used, is going to be useful for that specific use case that you have. And then you move on to other steps, e.g., machine learning and other things. So when we look at step two, there are defined variables and evaluate harmonization. That's where the question that we are trying to answer comes from. So let's say on the left, on the top box, you have an original codebook, which constitutes of the variables that you have. And then you have a target codebook, the data that you want to harmonize to. And then you have raw data, which is optional. Maybe you have a couple of data that you're trying to work with. So what we decided to come up with was an easy, intuitive software, if I may say, that would help to assist somebody to map the data from one end to the other, meaning you could have a code book that has a certain type of variables and the way you've named them, and then you'll be able to map that data to a different type of a different data set that has been collected by maybe another organization or group of people. And we also found that it is useful to use large language models because they would help in understanding how the variables and names and their context, therefore reducing the manual labor that people would have to go through to figure out which variable maps to what. So the idea is you have a code book, you have a harmonized one where you want to map to, and then some raw data, you put it into an application, and then have your variables mapped. And then from there on, you can apply that to downstream activities. So we have what we call the data harmonization solution, and that is what I'm going to be talking about moving forward. How do we answer some of these questions that I mentioned above? So we had a tool that was developed by one of our DSI Africa organizations, which is called the HIT. And so we built on top of that since it was something that was easy to adopt, right? So it is built with, simply using Streamlit is not a complex technology stack, right? So the idea is We have large language models, which we can download locally, and I'll show you how to do that. We process the variables locally. We have a confidence scoring for the mapping and the recommendation. And then we have a human in the loop to be able to assess and see if the mapping was correctly done. Okay. So the reason why we chose large language models was, of course, one of the biggest one was privacy, but there are also financial implications when you use off-the-shelf models to do this type of work. Okay, so privacy, growing API budgets, and then sometimes you have rate limits that you are not very well informed of. So we needed to use a local instance in order to be able to circumnavigate some of these tools. And then, of course, we have adoption and customization. So it's easy to take the tool, it's available online, and then you'd be able to adopt it to any specific use case that you have. So how does the tool work? So the first thing that you need to know is that with this platform, we have local models, large language models, such as GPT models or whatever model you're aware of. These models are freely hosted on a platform called Ollama, as you can see here. So Ollama is an open source platform that you can download onto your computer. It's platform agnostic. You can see it's available on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. So once you download these models, once you download the application and install it, there are several models that are available to you. If you go to the website, you'll be able to see some. So you should be able to choose a model that is available for download, but also has the right size that could fit your local instance. So meaning if you have maybe like 5 GB of RAM, you might need a model that uses less RAM, and then it will be able to run effectively on your machine. So Ollama is something for you to check out. It's very easy to go and download some of the models. So in our harmonization tool, these are the steps we have. Of course, step one, you upload your target book, you define your harmonization standard, then you upload the incoming data sets, add descriptions, AI descriptions for generation. So since we are using a large language model, you can change the prompting if you're so comfortable with that. So what happens is whatever you input is broken down into vector embeddings for contextual understanding. And then we use the RAG technique to retrieve what has been put into the vector databases and do the mapping. And then step 4, the algorithm will then suggest mapping. Using vector similarity calculations, it will be able to tell you which of the variables are similar. And then, of course, you have human in the loop quality control. So that means at the end of the day, someone will actually see if the work that was done by the model is good or it needs revision. Then once that is done, of course, you export the harmonized mapping for you to be able to do your other tasks. So on the right, you're seeing a screenshot of how that would look like. So this is what the current tool looks like, and it's available for download on GitHub. So on the left, you have several tabs that you can use for your data synthesis or uploading your notebooks. But the most interesting one is this one where you do the mapping of studies. So as you can see on the left, we are on the map studies tab. And then we have variables from the top. You can see that we have a variable called sex. Okay, that's the variable to map. And then we have near the percentage, near the 84% confidence, we have another variable which it's supposed to map to, which is the participant ID. So what it's telling us right now is that it mapped sex to be the same as participant ID, and it has 84% confidence. Obviously, as a human, we know that is wrong. So the way to go about it now would be to choose one of the options successfully marked to reconsider or marked as unmappable, and then save this result. So one thing that we have realized is that the bigger the model, the more accurate it is. So for this version, we are using a training, some experimental model just to test the workflow. And that's why it's not doing so well, but some models do much better. So we have used this tool. Some people have used it. We have had successful pilots with Madiba, HIT, and other research centers. The tool is available on GitHub with Docker deployment for easy setup. So the next integration modification would be for data transformations, more testing, and compiling more training materials such as this for people to be able to use. Thank you very much for paying attention and for this opportunity. Bye.
Thank you very much for that interesting discussion, Twine. If anybody would like to ask a question, please may you raise your hand or put your question in the chat. Atwina is available on the call to answer any of the questions you may have.
I think that is your hand.
Yes, Francis.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to thank Atwine for a really interesting presentation and also for him taking on such an enormously challenging subject and project. Atwine, I wanted to ask you, what are the foremost obstacles you think that you need to overcome? And like, if you could have a magic toolkit or something like that, what would you want to have in it?
Thank you so much, Francis, for the question. So for the first part, I think it's an infrastructure issue. That's the biggest hindrance in terms of if you want to make something like this work with high precision and capacity. And for us at the S or at Ilwazi, we have discovered through different tests that size matters. The bigger that you have in terms of infrastructure, the more capacity you'll be able to accomplish. So that's the first part. And what was your second question? Sorry.
If you could have a magic toolkit, what would you wish to have in there?
Well, it would be really the capacity to take on any size of model that I want. I think that would be the best magic tool for me, actually. So yeah, it still ties back to the infrastructure bit because that's one of our biggest issues.
Thank you very much, Atwine. Cynthia says in the chat, please may you post the link to Access Llama.
Oh, the link to access Ollama, not Llama.
Yes, I guess it's Ollama.
Okay, I'm doing that now.
Okay, I have a question for you here. I think my question is, what can your organization or your project offer to research partners?
Well, right now, you mean apart from the tool?
Yes.
Because I think that's the biggest value proposition. So some of the things that we are offering right now is a way to organize your data, because some of the projects that we have been working with, especially we have a data catalog, so we give people access or ability, and also we hold them by the hand to help them organize their data. We help them also train them in areas such as verification processes, so, and many other issues. But yeah, mostly it's around organizing their data and making it fair, which ties into what the tool is doing actually.
All right.
I hope that answers.
Pardon?
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Twine. If anybody has any more questions, please may you post them in the chat. You are still available and still on the call, I believe. So Twine will be able to
Yes, I'm here.
answer your questions. And he's also put his contact details in case anybody would like to reach out to him. In the interest of time, we need to move on to the next speaker on our agenda, and we're going to have Temi Tope. Are you on the call?
Yes, I'm on the call.
All right. I understand you'd like to share your screen. You're presenting live?
Yes, I am.
All right. Okay. I'm just pulling up your introduction here. Sorry, just give me a second, please.
Problem.
Or would you just like to introduce yourself briefly? Sorry, I'm
No, it's
struggling to
fine.
pull this thing up.
No problem. All right. Good, I don't know, afternoon, evening, depending on when you're joining. My name is Temitope Kundayo, and I'm basically head of partnerships and enterprise at Intron. Over the years, I've spent over about 15 years in the technology data space, starting out from telecommunications, now moving to where we are. To put it in simple words, Intron provides technology, voice AI solutions that provides a simple way for multiple use cases or clinical workers to reduce the time in terms of collating or transcripting information that they gather. And so one of those use cases started in health vertical. We had initially wanted to digitize the hospitals that we found ourselves. And so we had built EMR solutions to essentially digitize these solutions and allow us to be able to help healthcare workers to get better, more efficient. But over time, we found out that the issue was not just about digitizing, but about data inputs, how are data computed. Most of them were still using typical pen and paper, and we wanted to move them to keyboards. And they resisted strongly. And over time, we had to then find out the answer to most of the bottleneck is through our voice. And as we kept getting or deep diving into the problem, we started seeing that there is this major gap in how global technologies are providing context around African voices. In fact, there was none as at the time we started. And we launched 2019 to essentially provide the voice infrastructure for African researchers, healthcare, and workers to be able to improve a lot of the healthcare systems in the country. And I think with that, this would be good to segue into my presentation, or this is enough to start. But yeah, that's a bit about what we do, and I can then talk about what we've done so far.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Let me just present, and please feel free to at any time reach out and ask at any time if you need any, will I just call it any Yeah, if you need anything that you're not clear on, please just let me know. Okay, I'm going to be sharing my screen now. And starting from scratch, please, you can just confirm if you can see my screen. Fine.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Just like I said, we're building Africa's voice AI infrastructure, which again expands the entire point of data science and partnerships. So why did we begin this, right? We found out a lot of clinicians spend almost 4 hours daily on manual notes, which takes a lot of time. So especially within emerging markets from Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and whatnot, you find out that a typical doctor or clinician is seeing more than 500 patients a day. When you think about the hours he's spending writing notes, a lot of time is taken. Basically, they don't have time for themselves. And then when we find out that global ASR tools, which is speech recognition tools, are always oftentimes misinterpreting African names, accents, or even don't understand local languages, literally almost all the times, right? And there's also that data scarcity in terms of label speech or data blocks to improve any AI development or model here. And so we were built to solve these three category problems simultaneously, providing Africa-specific data models and even deployments. Okay. And so what we've built over time has been many firsts in the world, but again, things that drives our data background. First, we built one of Africa's first speech-powered AMR that has context on African accents. It's not adapted from Western tools. They are built from scratch. We have a proprietary data engine over at this point 40,000 contributors from across 30 countries. And we built our own model called the Sahara version 1 and now just launched version 2. With version 2, we've seen over 500 accent types in English with over 26 African languages supported from Afrikaans, Bemboa, Gar, Lesotho, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Pidgin, I can go on. And what we've done because of an enterprise is to create low latency, over 200 milliseconds in terms of latency, and we keep refining that further along. We're also award winning. Recently, last year we got using our Afrimed QA data set. We wrote an impact paper which won in Vienna from the ACL, and we currently are deployed in 6 countries where we are active. So what are our products essentially, and what do we do for users? On one side is the clinical speech to text. So it deploys either by a narration, dictation, or conversation or ambient listening mode, which works with doctors and patients and work with doctors for patient consultations that turns those consultations into structured clinical notes with 7 times the current input of documentation speed by typing or writing. This note can be turned to either SOAP notes, ICD coding, or can be integrated in an existing AMR solution. We're not just only deployed alone for health, but across multiple vectors. We're being used in either call centers. We're used and deployed in the law courts, right? In Nigeria, we have some pilots and POCs that we've had and done successfully. We can be used in the research field, both for DEX field research. We can be used for QA scoring, which is quality assurance scoring on conversations, which, for example, turns cost center of like a call center to actual call revenue plus. And like I said, our API models are enterprise grade, ready to be deployed both for speech to text or text to speech. We've also built things called voice biometrics, which in the concept allows you to record your voice and use it for, especially within the financial industry. And these are deployed on our RESTful APIs, or it can be deployed in situ in an enterprise grade, cloud, or offline. And then one of the interesting things we've started building is our Intron Connect, which is a widget tool that allows us to call customers. So because we also build voice bots that allow us to call customers in local languages from the hospitals to check them especially for high-risk patients, but this can be deployed for other use case across board. We are also HIPAA, ISO 27000 and SOC 2 compliance, and also NDPR compliance. Just so that the next thing will be, sorry. The next thing will be at scale where we've been deployed. We'll be deployed in multiple hospital sites, multiple partners. Some of them are represented here, but we can, of course, talk about where they are. But we've seen exact impact stories, and I can just tell you one. UCH Ibadan is one of the largest West African hospitals in around that region. And their department in radiology used to have backlog that was crippling patient experience totally. They had radiologists that we onboarded into our solution from clinical dispatch, and what we saw was improved turnaround time from 48 hours to 20 minutes, right? That's 2 days to 20 minutes. That's just giving you the impact of what we've done. And so most of our speech-to-text solutions and dialogues can be found either in Hugging Face or other papers. Also on our website, you can see some of the methodologies of our research across different places where our existing infrastructure reaches. We're in collaboration with global partners like the Gates Foundation, Pat Foundation, and others. So what are we bringing, especially to you, and why we're in the room, is that one, we provide proprietary African voice data, right? Access to curated health speech data set, benchmarks, audio corporate that you cannot see globally, right? We validated this because it's production ready, it's already deployed, it's live, it's being used as we speak today. We have a Pan-African reach in terms of operations, with operations in Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and co. And of course, deploying the multiple use cases where it exists. So what are we looking for? We're looking for research collaborator partners who can do co-investigators for maybe clinical NLPs, behavioral voice AIs, or safety studies across low-resource African health settings. We can grant co-applicants. If you do have any existing grants that you think we could collaborate on, we can definitely work with you on that, or site partners where we think we can evolve and improve reach. And then finally, of course, on use cases, if you're a fintech or a provider that you think you can pilot this to us. Then, of course, like I said, we are in cloud and technology. We work with NVIDIA, AWS, Google, Microsoft, basically all the global providers. But what we've done is also to bring down costs appropriately. We've been backed by both investors, both in Africa and globally, including, and then we've worked with multiple global providers. So I think I'll just let it stop there for any questions you may have. I look forward to answering them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Temitope. If you have a question, please may you lift your hand. Please may you raise your hand, sorry. We have a question here in the chat that says, thanks, Temitope, for your presentation. Is it possible to have the text to voice also translate into language of choice of the patient?
Yeah, I mean, two things, if I get your question right. If, let's say, this is text to speech, right? If the text to speech can be translated to different language, yes, we can. What we are doing right now, because we're training multiple languages as we speak, is based on whatever use case you have. You can talk to us. We can let you know what language especially you're looking for if it's within the current 23 we have, or if we need to gather or filter, and then we can discuss on maybe how that would work or run or commercial conversations. But yeah, we can actually do that. For now, what we have deployed, even if you want to test out the platform live, we do have for now English with multiple accents, and then we have Hausa, which is one of the regional languages spoken in Nigeria. But we're deploying others as in terms of TTS support. But for the speech to text, we do have all 23 African languages, so you can transcribe the conversations into text. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Alash. All right, Umar, your hand is up too.
Yeah, once again, good evening from my own end. Nice presentation and nice project. This totally aligned to what I do because this was my PhD research, which was speech recognition for Hausa language, and I was able to curate a data set. So I have two questions. The first one is in terms of partnership as a researcher because it's an area I'm deeply interested in. I was trying to work on something similar to this. So that is by the side. The question is that, so for, I know you say, okay, it's been recorded between the conversation between the doctor and the patient. So if we're deploying your API, do we need a third party hardware or how does the recording happen?
Oh, very, very good question. So that's why I said the models and modes are different. You can dictate using your regular laptop. You can narrate using your regular laptop, what do you call it, audio button. But we found it depends on the settings and areas. You can actually deploy desktop microphones, right? They're which we can either provide or you can get it. It doesn't really matter as long as it has like we most times send you what will be a best option to capture the audio so that our system can translate better because the key thing is capturing the right audio so that the system translates properly. But to answer your question, right now people deploy without the Dex microphone, but sometimes they have to because of the area, the location, or some other variables whereby we either give you a hardware, which is some Dex mics, which we have. I could have shown you on the call, but we can of course talk about that, or you can actually get a one we recommend. It's just a simple plug and play to your laptop, so you don't need any complex major studio kind of hardware. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. And I think your second question was on partnership. Sure, I'm dropping my contact. My email is here. You can feel free to reach out to me and we'll respond immediately. You can also copy another email that will also respond just in case I don't. I hope that answers your partner. Okay, I think another question from Edube says, how well does the system work in rural areas? Yeah, most of these sites were deployed to are in actual rural areas or semi-peri-urban areas. Now, depends on the mode you want to deploy, right? Like I said, we have in-situ deployment where it's deployed in situ. You can do cloud-based deployment, which is using the API side, or you can decide to do offline. With offline, it will now be dependent if you have a hardware of your choice or we are deploying it offline fully, then we can come and make a recommendation. So yeah, we actually have the 3 mode types of deployment available, but it's going to be based on your use case. I hope that answers your question, Adube. Or if I'm getting your name well, sorry.
There's another question from Sebastian.
Hi, Sebastian. Please, sorry, I missed that. Yeah. Your question, please.
Sebastian, please unmute yourself. Sorry, if you're speaking, we can't hear you, Sebastian.
Yes, network.
Maybe you could try again, or maybe you could put your question in the chat for us, Sebastian.
Yeah, I think he's dropping his question. Hello, we can hear you, Sebastian. You can drop your questions. Yeah. Lalash also has another question which says, can your app do voice to voice with translation embedded? Alash, I may not be clear. Are you saying, I think voice to voice, are you saying someone speaks and get responded to? That can happen via, we're launching something called the streaming API, right? Depends on if you are deploying it from an existing app. So we can
I
say,
don't know if I can clarify, if you
go ahead. Thank you. That will
can
help.
hear me. But as a physician, if I speak, for instance, to a patient, does it translate to the language that the patient can understand? So it's really translation, but instead of using another app for that, can it be incorporated into text to voice that you have? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I got that. Yes, it's possible, but I will confirm from like my engineering because what we are doing is also around this case of real-time translation. So if that isn't yet live, but it's part of our roadmap, we do know that it is one of the key things working. So I can, of course, confirm, but you can always just reach out to me by email so that we can just verify that. But yeah, it's something within our roadmap for that to happen.
Thank you. I will.
All right. Getachew asks is if we're open for collaborative engagement. Yeah, we are definitely open. That's why I'm here. So please reach out to me and we'll definitely work on that. Atwin, can you share the paper? If let me just quickly try and get one of them and send that link across. Sebastian, your question is about data access. I want to know if you have Pidgin English data set that's accessible and how we can get that. Yes, you can. We have Pidgin English data sets. To do that is just send a mail to me and then we set up a call and give you that access. What we can, because you can access the language information from like documentation presets, and we just make you want to know your use case so that we can essentially make sure it's configured for that use case. So you please feel free to reach out. I'm also just redropping my email just in case some people missed that. So that we can have much deeper conversation. I don't.
There's another question here from Atwine that says, I'm interested in the Luganda. Is it domain specific? Like, can I find technical health terms?
That I may not be able to answer on the call. I think at 20 it would be great to have, we would definitely have to have a conversation so that we can understand your direct use case. I guess if you mean whether the current Luganda goes hand in hand with like, because for example, we have what we call a clinical diagnostic solution or CDST, right? That goes with the AI. So I want to be sure, are you saying that AI CDST is configured for Luganda or it's a case of the Luganda speech has a domain understanding of language? So I think having that one-on-one with my team, technical team, will just be able to clarify that. But for now, yes, I may answer technically yes until I get to know more about your use case.
Can I tell you my use case?
I mean, if you want to, definitely.
If the moderator is okay with it.
That's why
Yes.
I'm asking if she's okay. Are
Yes,
you okay?
go ahead. Yes, I'm okay with it. Please go ahead.
Okay, so we have been trying to do this collecting a data set for context-specific modeling for Luganda in what? In health. So what we're trying to do is try to use voice to kind of automate some of the processes that front-end workers have to go through. And we find the issue of most of the models we see that are talking about translational Luganda, they don't have like specific terms within their modeling. So if you say something like yellow fever, I wouldn't know how to translate that. So I was just wondering, because someone asked about your data set, within that data set, when you're doing the modeling, do you get those specific terms so that someone who is in a health context would be able to just plug it in and it would be what? That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay. Thank you. So if I hear you, you're making sure that the data sets have medical would I call it medical understanding of terms. So yes.
Yeah.
Remember we started from the health sector, so we can do SOAP notes across SOAP notes, ICD codes and others, right? What would also help is that what the current data sets are being are being captured by what current data sets are being captured by your current team in terms of frontline workers need cases. We can, of course, match it to what we already have and what we're already deploying. And good thing that we're also right now in Uganda deploying, I think, we have some 1 or 2 use cases for Uganda we're deploying for health workers. So we can, of course, just add your use case into that mix if you want to. Right? We already have some people on ground that can, of course, just showcase that to you if you need maybe a physical meet. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So I'll be looking forward to your email. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a question.
Okay.
My question is, you're clearly very good at, this networking thing and partnering. We've seen how you've partnered with all these different health institutions, hospitals, and whatnot. What's your secret ingredient? What's the recipe? How can people on the call learn from you to
I
partner
mean,
successfully?
yeah, thank you so much. I think it's a very good question on how have we been able to partner with how have we been able to partner with different hospitals or partners? I think one of the key things is that we started from the what I call it the data layer. That data layer allowed us to be able to will I call it standouts. I think that's the best option. We came with a unique solution, and most times when we go to sell to hospitals, the key thing we like to do is to map out what they are facing today, right? So we do what we call a site survey. We sit down with the hospitals, we map out the workstations, how many workstations, what type of workstation, how their current day-to-day workflow is. Sometimes even before they ever come, like even before we ever approach them, we want to just understand what their day-to-day chaos is. It also helps that the founder of the business worked at extensively in from like local big and tertiary hospitals. So there's also that domain context of what he has worked, what he has lived over the years working with patients and consultation. And when we go to hospitals, it's a case of look, right now, and we already know right now, your doctors are facing thousands of hours of data. You might be sitting on data you don't even know how to convert and use and make use for. You also might be sitting, you might be currently working in a very inefficient approach, right? That is costing lots of time for your team. And this is what we are essentially trying to solve. We're trying to reduce the timeline, the burnout, because we have lots of clinical workers burnout and they know. We're also trying to improve how they make money because at the end of the day, they are businesses, they're trying to make money. And so how can our solution, one, improve their productivity of the key clinicians, doctors, health workers? How can they make money? Very critical, and it has to be clearly defined. And of course, how we can create a seamless approach in terms of operational execution on if you agree to us, we'll come by XY date. This is what we would expect, and the trainings. So we found out that sometimes the users of the solutions, it's not like they don't want to, just some of them may not have enough digital skill sets. So when we learned that, we started building a training onboarding program that included digital skill sets on how to access internet, on how to do a LAN to wide area network or to an internet or accessing things, how to use a system, how to use a deployment. Because many of them may have that social stigma of shame to say, oh, because we cannot use a solution, all right, they would then say it's not working, right? It's actually working, it's just because they don't know how to use it. So we actually have had to, for the very first maybe 2 weeks, do a crash course in digital skill sets, right? And how to use it, test it, And seeing is believing. So whenever we are going to, especially when you're testing a low resource environment and talking to healthcare workers and co, it's best not to talk. It's best to show, right? And what most times we do, especially for example on the nursing station and when they're trying to onboard people, is like you use your pen and biro and onboard this staff. Let's use our system and onboard your people. I will time it. And they basically see that with this, with our solutions, we're onboarding people 10 times faster than like I'm at the 10th patient and you're still just on the second, right? And that starts bringing to context what our solution brings to them. So those are like interesting ways we've done to enter. And of course, in Africa, one of the key things is always who do you know, right? You don't just get into those places and expect your proposals to go through. So most times it's always good to that. Who do you know is important and we map that way. I hope this helps in a way.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Temitope and Atwine, for your very interesting presentations. As we can all see, they're very, interesting and helpful, useful things that are happening across the continent. I hope everyone has enjoyed this session. You've taken down contact details for further discussions for those who would like to engage with the speakers further. Nothing else from my side. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, bye, everyone.